UFC top contenders in the 155-pound division. Actually, I'm a little bit biased on this one. The guy I'm picking as my number one prospect is Mark Bonecrusher DeCasey. I love this guy from when he was fighting in the UK. He's 11-0, 2-0 inside the UFC. I think he has enough about his game to be a title contender. Maybe not this year, maybe by the end of next year, considering the way the title picture and top part of the division looks. I do think he needs a little bit of evolution, but I think he's got all the right attributes to evolve into a really top contender inside the UFC, maybe even a future champion. Number 2 on my list, James Vick. Recently went 10-0. The Executioner looks like he's made the necessary adjustments to become a top contender. You know, his win over Abel Trujillo, he showed that he can fight at range, which for a guy who's as big as he is, he really needs to take more advantage of that. He's great on the ground, and I think we'll be talking about him as a top 5 guy by the end of 2017. And rounding out my list, number 3, Islam Makhachev, 14-1. Looked so dominant last time out against Nick Lentz, and has so much more potential if he decides to get aggressive. You know, for anybody who watched that fight, you know, Daniel Cormier was, if he had more hair, let's say, he'd have been pulling it out in that fight, because Makhachev needs to find that next gear, you know, and I think he's got the ability to do it. I mean, what could become a big problem for him is if he gets to the top of the division and Khabib, who's his good friend, longtime training partner, is the champion. I don't see those two guys fighting at all, you know. So if we talk about Makhachev becoming a future champion, the only way I see that happening is if Khabib isn't at the top of the tree, you know. But he's got huge upside. He's definitely going to be a handful for anybody out there. You know, I don't know what the rankings in the UFC show currently, because I think the rankings are trash anyway. But I think Makhachev has all the ability to step in and compete with anybody in the division at the moment. So, stepping outside the UFC in the 155 division, we have some incredibly talented fighters as well. The number 1 guy on the list is a 9-1 record. All his wins are in the first round. He is an aggressive beast that beats you up and then takes you to the ground. And if he can't find an opening to submit you, he just keeps on beating you to a bloody pulp. This is Abubakar Yandiev. You know, I saw him fight very recently. I think he could step into the UFC tomorrow and beat guys inside the top 10. You know, he has everything about him that you could ask for. And I mean, obviously, when there's a step up in competition, maybe somebody will embarrass him. But I think he's got all the potential in the world. And the big question is why the UFC haven't moved to sign him now already. Number 2 on the list, quite strangely, you know, a lot of people might consider this guy as one of the best not fighting in the UFC at the moment. Justin Gaethje is 17-0, and at 28 years old, the current World Series of Fighting champion is hugely popular. You know, he's got 14 wins via TKO. You know, the way that he fights wins him many fans, but I think the way that he fights would also be his undoing in the UFC. You know, when he comes up against a smarter fighter, more technical fighter, you know, he can't just scrap. You know, the UFC fans would love him. I think he's the kind of guy that you can use to build, let's say, big stars out of, if he can also, you know, marry his aggression with calmness and technique. But yeah, he's got a huge upside. World Series of Fighting may be closing, so he may be looking to make a move. Number 3 on the list is the current KSW champion from Poland, Mateusz Gamrot. Currently 12-0, 26 years old. You know, he's got 4 TKO victories, 3 submission and 5 decision victories that show he's experienced and very well rounded. Having said all that, I think the UFC is a really big step up compared to who he has been fighting. I would love to see him make the switch, but as a Pole who's a champion inside a Polish organization where he's probably been paid very well, I don't know how attractive that is for him. You know, maybe he stays in Poland a few more years, evolves himself, but I think the organization, if they want him to be better, they need to supply him with better level of competition. Number 4 on the list, Thiago Moses, 9-1 and the current RFA champion. Still only 21 years old. The Brazilian does train with American Top Team and has had a lot of ring time, despite 6 of his wins coming inside the distance. The UFC might think he's too young, but I think he's got all the ability and he's proved himself in the feeder leagues. You know, I think if he doesn't get the shot this year or next year, it will be criminal. You know, I think he could come in and be a top 15 guy, you know. So do you want to build these young stars up, or are you just trying to do something else? You know, that's the big question for the UFC and the new owners right now. Number 5, Kusin Kalev, 16-1. Interestingly, actually, officially 16-1. Kalev claims many of his fights in Russia haven't been recognized, and the claims we could be talking about, you know, over 20 victories, maybe more. Either way, you know, he's a force to be reckoned with. He has 10 submission victories and 5 TKOs. His only loss was via split decision. I think if he does get the crack inside the UFC, he'll steamroll his way into the top 10. He's been training in New Jersey since 2013, so I think he'll feel comfortable in America. And again, it's another one of those where I don't know why the UFC haven't brought him in already. Number 6 on the list, Abdul Aziz Abdulvakarbov. Wow, you know, this is the guy who Goldberg looks at and is glad he's retired. You know, he's another Russian beating the path to the UFC, 14-1, with that loss being the first fight in his professional career. So he's won his last 4 via TKO. You know, we could almost consider it, that 14-fight win streak is, you know, really his official record. He's got 4 submission victories too, and the man that they call the Lion has every right to claim that he deserves to be fighting the best in the UFC. Number 7, Chris Fishgold, 16-1-1, the current Cage Warrior champion from Liverpool, England. He has a deceptively good stand-up game for a man with 11 submission victories. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the octagon soon. He's got all the tools to compete within the top 15. The UFC might be the only place for him to go up that's a step up, you know. He could go to other organizations, you know, and start collecting titles. But if he wants to go upwards, the UFC is the only place for him. Number 8 on the list, Islam Mamedov. He's 13-1 with 7 submission victories. He's currently competing in World Series of Fighting, and he's looked impressive in his 3 fights within the organization. The first 2 ended via TKO. I think this is a very competitive division in the UFC, and Mamedov is another high-level competitor who could probably step in and compete just as well inside the UFC as he does outside. It really is maybe the most talent-rich division, but so many of these guys are so well matched. I think that they go underappreciated a lot. Number 9 on the list, Adam Piccolotti, 28 years old, and he's currently fighting in Bellator, 9-0 with 4 submission wins. Even though he's fighting in Bellator, he's yet to really face what we can consider elite level competition. he's beat everybody you've put in front of him though. That's all you can ask. You know, you can't ask guys to do more than that. So it's another case of when we put someone in good in front of him, what happens? You know, can he make those steps upwards? And then rounding out the top 10, I've gone with an Englishman, Alvy Davis. He's 6-1. I think he's got all the potential to be a huge star. He does some modeling, but the big thing that made me put him on this list is his elite level kickboxing. You know, this guy is a great striker. Obviously, he needs to evolve the other areas of his game, and from what I've seen and read about him, he's putting a lot of effort into that. I think he could make the switch to the UFC maybe the back end of 2017, 2018. And again, it comes down to a lot of how much does he evolve, what happens when he steps up to fight better level of competition. But Alvy Davis could be a big star in MMA in the future. So that's my round out for the 155 division. Have a listen to the other lists. Tell me what I've got wrong, what I've got right, what you think. Thanks for listening.